Did you know that with Google Ads, your product feed accounts for over 90% of your success? Most e-commerce brand owners vaguely optimize their product feed and end up leaving tons of revenue on the table simply because they have no idea how to even optimize their product feed. So in this video, I'm gonna take care of that question for you, and I'm gonna tell you some of the best practices when it comes to optimizing the product feed, when it comes to setting it up the right way. All practices which I found after now spending over $50 million with Google Ads alone. But before you can take advantage of any of these best practices, you need to first understand what Google Ads even looks for when it comes to the right kind of product feed. The first thing Google wants from you, regardless of what niche you're in, regardless of what brand you run, is relevant information. It's as simple as basically stating within your product titles, descriptions, having a product image which showcases what the user is searching for. For instance, if you are trying to sell oranges and a lot of the keywords within your product titles are apples, obviously that's not relevant because you're not selling apples, you're selling oranges. This is going to count against you. This is going to make it difficult for your brand to scale to the next level. Second thing that Google's algorithm wants for your brand is quality. Now, quality in terms of the product images, quality in terms of the product titles, not just quality in the type of service you provide. Yes, that's very important too, because that ultimately determines how much your brand even scales. But to even get to that level, you need to attract the customer through the door. And with Google Ads in general, the product image, title, what you do in the Google Merchant Center, all these things should be high quality. And this high quality, it is determined based on what your competitors are doing. So don't think that just because you hired a photographer, now you have the best photos in the world, all of a sudden you're going to start getting extra sales. Because if your competitors have the same style of photos, if your competitors have the same styles of titles, Google Merchant Center programs, etc., then your brand will still struggle no matter what you do in terms of photography. So it's always about standing out from your competitors. But this now brings me to the third thing which Google's algorithm wants from your brand, and it wants differentiation. Now, there are so many brands out there, or there are so many other stores out there selling something similar to what you sell. Maybe they're 10, 20, 50, 100, doesn't matter. What Google wants is Google wants that specific brand, which is not only able to provide high quality information, relevant information, but is also able to differentiate itself from these other 10, 50, 100 different brands to stand out. And one question I always ask myself when we're creating these strategies, creating these ads for brands under my Google Ads agency or marketing is, how do we make our brand stand out? How do we make our ads stand out from all of these gazillion competitors? By the way, if you run a brand doing $1 million a year, you need extra help scaling your brand to the next level with Google Ads, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see essentially how we can work together and make that happen. But now that we covered the three major things which Google's algorithm wants, doesn't matter what niche you're in, doesn't matter what industry you're in, let's now go over each of these best practices in detail. The first best practice you want to keep in mind with Google Ads is you want to add all the necessary information you see from the refined results section after doing a quick search for your product. Here's what I mean. So for this example, I searched up the keyword wooden table. Now, all of these different types of wooden tables come up. All of these have different images, titles, etc. That's irrelevant. What's relevant and what's going to make your product and your product feed stand out is if you add all of these things here on the left-hand side, because that is different for every single brand, by the way. It's different for every single keyword research that you do. But for wooden tables, this is all important information. The category, the type of category this product is in. Is it a coffee table? Is it a console table? This is going to tell you not only what kind of product title you need to have, what keywords you need to have, but also what you need to add within the merchant center, within the feed itself. You need to be adding the shape of it. You need to be adding extra types of features. Is it sold in stores or not? And this, by the way, for stores, you can add your own store name here within the product feed itself, which is very interesting. But style, material, pricing, height type, etc. All these things, Google is literally telling you, hey, this is important information because this is how people search. So you need to have it within your product feed. And the more information you can add from the refined results section within your own merchant center, the better your ads will perform. Now, it's different for every search. As I said, when I searched up the keyword door stopper, we got all of these different kind of results coming up here. here. This is what people shop based on within door stoppers, and within Wooden Table, this is what we look at. So you need to first and foremost, for every single best-selling product at the minimum, have all of this information filled out within the Merchant Center. But that's kind of what will get your foot through the door, that will make it so that the algorithm has an easier time understanding when to show your ads for and when not to show your ad. But that now brings me to the second best practice when it comes to your Merchant Center and product feed, and that is using Amazon to add relevancy to your product feeds and to your product titles. Here's what I mean. Now we're gonna take this Wooden Table example one more time. We're gonna go on over to Amazon and we're gonna type in Wooden Table here. Now, once I type this in, what you want to be doing is you want to be looking at all of the Wooden Tables which are coming up, which are not sponsored, especially those in the front at the top. And what we're trying to do is, if we look right here, when we look at the keywords that these brands use, we can see it's very simple, it's very straightforward. This one says Metro Office Table. This one says Uplift Solid Wood Standing Desk. It's as simple as that. There's nothing too crazy. However, if you want to stand out, you cannot just be another brand that does something similar to this. You need to have a better product feed, and the better product feed starts with the title. So what we do on Amazon is we try to look at our competitors' product titles to understand what major keywords they're using. For example, in a specific listing like this one says 63-inch executive desk, large office computer desk with extra thick wooden tabletop and metal frame, modern, simple, ... There's more and more and more to this title, and all of this is key information, because all of these words, number one, they're heavily search engine optimized titles, because that's what works with Amazon. So right off the bat, you can find some very good keywords to use within your product titles to beat your competitors. But number two, they also have a high perceived value. This one says modern. It also says simple. These are keywords which you need to be taking into account when looking at all of these different competitors, because now that's going to give you the ability to make your brand's product titles much better, not only with better SEO techniques, but also with better perceived value. This is kind of the second best practice with Google Merchant Center. You want to use Amazon to your advantage. Don't just use it to copy what these brands are doing, but rather use it to get ideas of how to make your product feed better. And the best way to do that, again, is by implementing search engine optimization techniques as well as perceived value increasing techniques. But now this brings me to the third best practice on the list, which is the higher the perceived value, the better. Now, I already covered perceived value a little bit with this Wooden Table example, but essentially what you want to understand with Google's algorithm is Google wants to showcase those products and those brands with higher click-through rates more towards the front, and those brands which are not really kind of connecting with the audience, which are not really getting that many sales, Google's algorithm starts to push it more and more to the back. That's how generally the algorithm works, and you want to work alongside it. The best way to do this is by adding enough perceived value to your product into the overall feed where users think it's worth paying $1,600 for a wooden table like this. It's all about the perceived value. If you have a very simple, plain, boring image like this, there's no way I'm going to pay more than a couple $100s for a product like this. But if a product image is like this, where it's very unique, it makes you feel some emotions, and on top of that, it has words like modern, round, for example, premium, luxurious, heavy duty, portable. These are all perceived value increasing keywords, and that's what the audience at least wants to see. Because keep in mind, only when the audience wants to see that will they click on it, and when they click on it, that's when your click-through rates will actually go up. So that now brings me to the fourth best practice on the list, which is small image changes have big impacts. When I say small, I mean doing things such as maybe flipping the image itself. So instead of the table pointing from left to right, you flip it so that it's pointing from right to left. These are very small, minute changes, which you might think, hey, that's not really gonna make a big difference, but you'll be shocked to find out that your conversion rates and your click-through rates can increase by 1 to 3% just by these simple changes. Because if you look right here, for example, majority of these tables, they're pointing from left to right. That's just the nature of this kind of niche. But when you come in with a table that's pointed from right to left, for example, that's unique. That's a small thing, which is kind of like a pattern interrupt. And that stops you in your tracks from just focusing on the plain everyday product images, and then puts that focus on what is different, which is what you want to do. So this is a very best practice. Don't think that just changing the or flipping the image itself is not gonna do anything. It's going to do a lot of things. It's going to improve your conversion rates and your click-through rates overall. But this now brings me to the fifth best practice when it comes to product images: avoid Photoshop, period. And I mentioned this because I've seen so many brands out there where they'll use Photoshop and they will have it so that they have this very kind of unique or different color that's obviously fake in the background, or they will Photoshop their product on a fake background. So maybe it will be like a table, but it's a fake background, so it's like fake nature. You can clearly tell it's Photoshop. All that does is it decreases the perceived value of your product, and it makes users not want to trust your product because they think you have something to hide because you don't have real photographs. You don't have a real kind of approach for your images. Now, you're better off getting better conversion rates and click-through rates through just white background or real lifestyle image backgrounds. But if you run a brand doing $1 million a year, you need extra help scaling your brand to the next level, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see essentially how we can work together and make that happen. But check out this video right here on some of my performance max campaign tips and tricks, which we have been using to scale brands using these feed practices right here.